This might be the most overrated Mustang ever built, and also one of the most important. Because the Boss 429 wasn't built for you, it was built to win a war. These are 1,359 Ford Mustang Boss 429s, one of the most legendary muscle cars ever built. Not to dominate the streets, but to satisfy a NASCAR rulebook requirement. What emerged was one of the most misunderstood muscle cars in automotive history, a machine that disappointed drag racers but helped Ford win 26 NASCAR races in a single season. In 1968, Ford faced a problem. Their aging 427 and 428 cubic inch engines were losing ground to Chrysler's devastating 426 Hemi in NASCAR's Grand National Division. Ford needed a new weapon, something based on their latest engine family, the Ford 385 series. The solution would become known as the Boss 429, but its path to production was anything but straightforward. The man behind this project was Simon Bunky Knudsen, Ford's newly hired president who came over from General Motors with ambitious plans. Knudsen recruited Larry Shinoda, a Japanese-American designer who had worked on the Chevrolet Corvette to help improve Ford's performance image. When people asked Shinoda what he was working on, he would simply say it was the boss's car, referring to Knudsen himself. That casual reference would become automotive legend. NASCAR's homologation rules, the requirement to produce street versions of racing engines, demanded that at least 500 cars equipped with the new engine be sold to the public. But here Ford made an interesting decision. Instead of putting the Boss 429 engine into the intermediate Torino that actually raced in NASCAR, they chose the much more popular Mustang platform. It was a marketing move that would create one of the most complex engineering challenges in muscle car history. The Boss 429 engine was essentially a race motor forced into street duty. Ford's engineers had designed what they internally called the semi-hemispherical head version of the 429 cubic inch V8. When unveiled to the public in autumn 1968, various nicknames were considered: Blue Racer, Blue Crescent, Shotgun Engine, and even Twisted Hemi. The shotgun name stuck in racing circles because the exhaust ports were so large they resembled shotgun barrels. But fitting this massive engine into a Mustang required radical surgery. Every Boss 429 had its shock towers completely removed and replaced with specially designed reinforced pieces, widening the engine compartment by 2 inches. Even then, clearance was so tight that the power brake booster had to be thinned, and the battery was relocated to the trunk. Air conditioning? Forget about it. There simply was not room. The first Boss 429 Mustang, designated KK NASCAR 1201, rolled off the assembly line at CarCraft's Brighton, Michigan facility on January 15, 1969. These cars began their journey at Ford's Rouge plant in Dearborn, then were shipped to CarCraft, a specialized company contracted by Ford to handle the complex modifications needed to shoehorn the racing engine into the Mustang body. Each car received a special NASCAR identification plate and a KK production number. What buyers got for $4,798, nearly twice the price of a base Mustang, was something unprecedented. The Boss 429 featured the largest functional hood scoop ever installed on a production Mustang, a distinction it holds to this day. Under that massive scoop sat a 735 CFM Holley 4-barrel carburetor on an aluminum intake manifold, feeding the semi-Hemi heads that made this engine special. Ford officially rated the Boss 429 at 375 horsepower at 5,200 RPM and 450 pound-feet of torque at 3,400 RPM. But everyone knew these numbers were conservative, intended to keep insurance companies happy. The actual output was believed to be well over 500 horsepower, with racing versions producing more than 600 horsepower. Some early S-Code cars featured magnesium valve covers and NASCAR-style forged internals that brought them even closer to the race specification. On March 30th, 1969, the Boss 429 made its NASCAR debut at the Atlanta 500. Cale Yarborough won that race, and it was just the beginning of Ford's domination. The 1969 season saw the Boss 429 win an incredible 26 races, including an 11-race winning streak during the summer. David Pearson, driving cars powered by the Boss 429 engine for Holman Moody, captured his third and final championship that year, often battling his legendary rival Richard Petty. The Boss 429 engine also powered Ford's other NASCAR weapons, including the Mercury Cyclone Spoiler II and the Torino Talladega. But while the Boss 429 was conquering NASCAR's superspeedways, street performance told a different story. Muscle car enthusiasts expected this Mustang to rival the best Corvettes and demolish quarter-mile times. They were disappointed. The problem was fundamental. The Boss 429 was designed as a high-revving NASCAR engine, not a drag racing motor. Early cars suffered from incorrect valve springs that limited revs to 4,500 revolutions per minute instead of the intended 6,000, neutering much of the engine's potential. Even with modifications like Hurst linkage, traction bars, and rejetted carburetors, the Boss 429's quarter-mile performance fell short of other big-block specialty cars. Stock examples managed the quarter-mile in under 14 seconds, respectable but not class-leading. The engine needed high revs to make its power, which worked perfectly for sustained high-speed NASCAR racing, but poorly for standing start acceleration. This gap between expectation and reality has followed the Boss 429 throughout its history. Critics argue it is one of the most overrated muscle cars ever built, pointing out that it never actually competed in NASCAR, despite being powered by a NASCAR engine. The Torino Talladega, which did race and helped secure Ford's 1969 championship, used the same engine but received far less attention from collectors. Production variations added complexity to the Boss 429 story. The early S-Code engines were closest to the racing specification. They were followed by the lighter T-Code engines introduced mid-year 1969, and finally by the A-Code engines used throughout 1970. Each variant used different internal components and characteristics, which made some more desirable than others. Color options were limited but distinctive. All 1969 models came with black interiors and a choice of 5 exterior colors: Raven Black, Wimbledon White, Royal Maroon, Candy Apple Red, or Black Jade. The 1970 models expanded the palette to include Calypso Coral, Pastel Blue, and the famous Grabber colors in blue, green, and orange. The hood scoop, which was body-colored in 1969, was painted black on all 1970 models. When Boss 429 production ended in December 1969, a total of 1,359 had been built, 857 from the 1969 model year, and 499 from 1970. Ford actually lost money on each car because of the extensive modifications required, making the Boss 429 as much a prestige project as a profit center. The end came partly because Dodge introduced the aerodynamic Charger Daytona, which eventually made the Boss 429 approach to NASCAR obsolete. Today, the car is remembered for its championships and for what it taught manufacturers about building a purpose-built race car. The end came suddenly. Bunky Knudsen was fired from Ford in late 1969, and Larry Shinoda was dismissed just days later. The Boss 429's brief production run reflected the corporate politics that created it as much as market demand. Ford continued using the Boss 429 engine in NASCAR until 1974 across various Ford and Mercury platforms, but the Mustang application was finished. Today, the Boss 429's reputation has been completely rehabilitated. What was once seen as a disappointing street machine is now recognized as one of the most significant Mustangs ever built. Auction prices reflect this transformation, with examples regularly selling for $250,000 to $627,000 depending on condition and provenance. Proper Marti report documentation has become essential for authentication, with a Concours Quality Boss 429 commanding $580,000, while even fair condition examples bring $238,000. The Boss 429 has found new life in popular culture, most notably in the John Wick film series, where Keanu Reeves' character drives one. Ironically, the car used in the movies was actually a Mach 1 playing the role of a Boss 429. The filmmakers needed 5 identical cars for stunts, and finding that many authentic Boss 429s would have been impossible and prohibitively expensive. For enthusiasts who want the Boss 429 experience without the 7-figure price tag, Classic Recreations now builds officially licensed continuation cars under Ford's blessing. Starting at $209,000, these modern interpretations use Ford's 7.3-liter Godzilla 5.8 and modern engineering while maintaining the visual drama of the original. The 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 429 represents a unique moment in automotive history when corporate mandates, racing requirements, and street performance collided to create something unprecedented. It was not the muscle car people expected, but it was exactly what Ford needed to dominate NASCAR and cement the Mustang's performance legacy. Sometimes the most important cars are not the ones that win drag races, they are the ones that win championships and capture imaginations for generations. For years, people judged the Boss 429 by quarter-mile times. They compared it to Hemis, to LS6 Chevelles, to big block Corvettes. And by that measure, it disappointed. But that was never its mission. The Boss 429 was not built to win drag races. It was built to beat Chrysler, to dominate NASCAR, to secure championships. And it did exactly that. The Boss 429 did not win the drag strip, it won the war.